we figured we'd take some time to recap our indoor states experience. Heather's first tournament ever with a barebow, and my first tournament ever with a barebow. So we figured, you know, people have been following our progress as we've been moving forward through learning and shooting barebow and getting her set up. So we figured we might as well take some time to talk about it. And Heather has some interesting things to share, and I do as well. We both learned some things over the tournament, so I think we might as well take an opportunity to talk about it.
To talk about.
I don't know. So Heather's got a lot of things that she's been thinking about in regards, because she's a new shooter. She's not just a new tournament shooter for the very first time. It's also, I mean,
well,
what, 6 weeks ago?
I did 5 years ago practice for 6 weeks and shot on a compound, Arizona, and placed last. But yeah, I'd been shooting for 6 weeks. It was,
Yeah.
So it didn't go as well as this one did, I guess.
Well, we did a video coaching review mock-up with her a while ago. If you haven't seen that, by the way, we'll put links in the description below and a card up there for you to check out. But that was, I don't know, you had shot, I think, 3 times before then?
I think that was my 3rd time ever picking up a barebow.
Like, literally the 3rd time actually picking up the barebow, not just, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that wasn't even that long ago, and since then she hadn't shot much until
at all.
Yeah, at all. Like literally
None.
once every month, maybe.
Not
maybe.
even. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 6 weeks ago she's like, "Hey, why don't you want to shoot a tournament?" Like, sure. So we picked states.
Well, we're
that was
both
first.
competitive people, so
Yeah.
and I was feeling the lack of competition in my life and thought, oh, what the hey? Let's try this.
Yeah, so we decided to do that, and both of us at that point really decided to actually start shooting.
Yes.
I was shooting on and off more than her for sure, but still not really trying for anything in particular.
Well, I tried to shoot every day for 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And then after like the 4th day, I couldn't move my arms and my arms were falling asleep. I was like, this is a lot harder than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
So then I had to go to every other day and actually take a little bit of time off.
At first, she couldn't even get past shooting 20, 25 arrows.
Not even.
Yeah, and couldn't lift her arm up anymore. Her
That
bow
was the
arm.
problem. The bow arm was so
Yeah.
weak because of my noodle arms. I couldn't do it. I could pull the bow back, but I couldn't lift it up.
Yeah, so,
So
you know, she was very worried in the beginning about shooting 60 arrows for score plus practice, but, you know, as people have shot tournaments before, there's way more sitting and waiting than there is shooting.
Idea.
And so she was worried. I was like, trust me, you don't understand. We can try to mock it up at home, but it'd be so boring you wouldn't want to shoot anymore.
that's probably true.
Yeah. So she got stronger, and we got her set up with arrows and, you know, all that stuff. And, you know, pretty much daily, every time you were shooting, I was at least trying to give you pointers here or there.
Every time I shot, you were there watching me and you were helping me.
Yeah.
So
You know, just keeping an eye on things, because especially
because I would do this, or one time I had my head weigh in, and I was doing crazy stuff, hiked my hip out.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of stuff that, you know, as everybody who's shot a while or has seen new archers or is a new archer, it's easy to get out of control and have bad habits and do things that you shouldn't be doing.
But I didn't even know I was doing them. It was just
the whole point.
happening.
Yeah, but that's what being a beginner is it takes time to get body awareness and control, and then not only that, to be able to feel what should be a large difference but ends up being a small difference. Like from being here to here is just it's for me, it's in my feet. It's the balance, the weight and balance thing. You know, so it's just a different thing. It's a perception thing, and you didn't have it built up at all.
Not at all.
So yeah. So the tournament went pretty well for us. You know, we went to, it was at Easton Sports Complex in Newberry, Florida. And the week before, we went and got a time slot on the weekend for her to try, you know, get used to shooting indoors, because
I've never shot indoors.
Yeah, we've just been shooting outdoors, and the lighting is totally different out there. So she had to figure out how different.
Yeah, that was really hard actually, with the lights like blinding you, and and all of the echoes in a gym, and it was a very different experience than being outside, where I feel very comfortable.
Yeah, the range at Easton is they use like really high intensity fluorescent lights, and they flicker, and it's not exactly pleasing to the eye. It's great to see as far as, when you're seeing your arrows on the target, because there's no shadows, it's that bright. But then you get to that point of where it's so bright, it starts messing with your eyes.
Yeah.
So even for me, I was struggling with my contacts drying out.
He was poking himself in the eye to make them water because he didn't have contact solution.
Yeah, it was just, they were drying out, and I couldn't see my arrow, I couldn't see my string. My score wasn't bad because of that. I didn't have a shot cycle. I didn't have a shot routine driven in, and I think that was one of the very first things that she figured out and needed help with in the beginning, was the shot routine, like what you're actually supposed to be thinking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been really big. And obviously I still don't have it, but I started making a set that I would say, okay, first I'm going to place my feet, and if you watch me shoot at this tournament, I'm sure I looked ridiculous, because I'd step up and I'd look at the ground and I'd say, okay, my feet, nope, angles of my toes are different, okay, now they go there, and then my knees, and then my hips, and then my abdomen, and it was like so mechanical. It was just, I'm sure it was comical.
But that's what it was needed.
But that's the only way I could do it. Otherwise, it was different every time.
Sure, but in the beginning, you started, in practice, you were shooting fine. And then scoring, you started to struggle a little bit in the beginning.
A lot.
Because you were thinking about all sorts of weird stuff, right?
Well, right. So I had tons of, like, I don't want to say it was negative, like, headspace, but it was more of I was so fearful that I would forget a step and miss the target, because that was my whole goal going into this, was not to miss the target, and not to shoot my friend's target next to me or something, So I was so worried about that, and then eventually I was like, Jake pulled me aside and he'd be like, what's going on? You're doing that, you're not reaching, and this isn't happening. So eventually I just reset, and I started, probably looked like I was hyperventilating between every single set of my sequence to help clear my brain, because I was really nervous. My heart was in the cardio zone. I think it was 170 beats per minute at some point. I looked at my watch and I was like, I don't get that running.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's a whole thing, even if it's not a pressure to win, it's a pressure that you put on yourself, and that's what Heather was doing, and she got, in the beginning, distracted and was, I don't remember what you were thinking about, but you're having issues with your bow cant. You were having issues with string alignment because you couldn't see it because of the lights.
I couldn't see
at all. Yeah, and same with me. The string alignment was terrible, but I know, because I've shot 1 million arrows, that you just forget about it and control what you can. If you truly can't see something, you just move past it and control everything else much more. And so I had to remind her.
Well, you said use the target, the edge of the target, but with my riser.
Well, that was for canting.
For canting, because that was all over. And you're like, just forget about the string, because if you can't see it now, you're not going to see it in 5 minutes stressing about it. So just forget it and use your plunger to make up the difference.
To get impact point. But I remember one point I said, push. Remember to push. You forgot to push at the finish through the arrow hitting the target, not just to get the shot off.
Right. Well, I mean, that's been throughout. So when we went to the practice at the week before, I realized that in those lights I cannot see the arrows in the target at all. I have double vision, which is odd, but it's a thing, and I literally can't see where the arrows are. So our thing was look for the gold and just with all my intention push at the gold and only make adjustments between ends, because I can't see what's happening at the target for each arrow. Well, and I wasn't pushing, and I had no intention. I was just like,
well,
there
in the
goes
beginning,
the shot.
You were also worried about not being able to hold steady, because you were saying, I'm trying to hold steady, but I'm so amped up, I'm having a hard time. And I was like, well, that's where, again, you forget about that and you only push towards where you want the arrow to go. Let the arrow float.
Actually, you said something that was really beneficial, and even though I don't know if I believed it 100%, but it did make me feel better, where you're like, well, some people think that the nervousness is just heightened awareness, and so you're just more aware of your body movements, of your heart rate, of your blood pressure, where you may not be as aware in other situations. And so I could reframe it in my brain and think, okay, well, I'm not nervous, and change that negative headspace to I'm just very aware, and I can harness that awareness into performance.
Sure.
And, you know, instead of groups this big, my groups really tightened up after that for most of the rest of the tournament. It was really lucky.
I mean, I thought she shot really well.
Till my last end.
Well, she had a mistake on the last one.
I know, my whole goal was not to miss a target, and then the last end.
And the first arrow of the last end.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to my hat, and I pulled it down, and I missed a target.
The string hit her hat, and it moved the arrow.
It was my fault. I should have paid attention.
But at least
so
you didn't
unaware.
miss because of nervousness. You were nervous, and part of it was brain fatigue. Because it was a long, it's 4 hours.
That was the most arrows I've ever shot at one time.
And
I'd never shot 60 before.
Yeah. So, and it takes time. It takes so much time, and there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of things you got to push aside, and it's challenging. So for your first one, I thought you did really well.
Yeah.
You didn't miss because you made a mistake.
Well, I made that mistake.
I mean, you made a mistake
but
by
I only
not,
missed one
but it's
arrow.
not like you collapsed and shot a terrible shot.
No.
Like, it was an okay
and
shot.
I recovered.
And then you shot a 9 and an 8 afterwards,
I
I think.
10.
A 10 and a 9? 10 and an 8.
10 and an 8.
Yeah, to follow it up on that end. So that was a good recovery.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still think she shot well. She shot a 220 and a 228 with a miss. So in that order. So that's good. I think it's good.
I mean, I didn't think I would do that well, for sure. I was hoping to cumulatively get 200 points.
Sure.
Like
out of 60 arrows.
Out of 60 arrows. That was my hope.
Yeah, she hadn't scored at all before that.
Never.
So she had no expectations other than don't miss.
And
or a hope, rather.
I failed that.
Oh, well.
So I think, looking back, if I wouldn't have had you there, like, correcting the little things as I went along, and as I was creating this feeling and, like, going through the motions of shooting, if I wouldn't have had, you or a coach doing that, I think it would have been a very different outcome at the 6-week mark.
Yeah.
Even if I had someone else setting up my equipment for me and my equipment was perfect, I still think without eyes on me as a shooter, it would have gone very, very differently.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot harder than I honestly didn't think it was going to be that hard. Like,
what, shooting in general?
Well, shooting, yeah, because I look at people like you and you make it look so effortless. It's like 10s and 9s only. So I thought, I can do that. But it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, for sure.
Yeah, it's not easy. But,
it's not.
it's the stupid little things that you make a mistake of. Like, in the beginning, and she told me this yesterday, I think, but that, after the first few weeks, she realized how important anchoring in the same place is to a consistent crawl or to a consistent anything.
Right. Well, I thought as long as it's along the same spot on my cheek, it doesn't really matter that much. But it turns out it really does matter. And finger pressure on the string. It was like the 5th week of
She discovered that on her own.
I was like, I need to have finger pressure on my first finger. So that was pretty cool to figure that out.
Yeah, so there's lots of little things that she ended up picking up over the time that made a big difference. Yeah. And, that's why I always recommend, if you've got $500 and it's burning a hole in your pocket, spend it on coaching. It's really, really where you're going to get your benefit from. The most bang for your buck is on coaching. As long as you have decent equipment and you can manage, then you'll be fine. It's the coaching is what makes the big difference, for sure.
And making sure the coach is I don't know about any of the certifications or any of that, but making sure that coach is a decent, like an experienced good coach, or I don't know, how would you vet a coach to make sure they were what you would want them to be?
It's hard to vet coaches because archery is a unique thing where it's an individual sport. So even if a coach is a coach, they may not be a coach to that person, or how much did they coach them? Did they have the natural ability, or just happen to fall into place correctly? And it's hard to vet that stuff. But I think finding a coach that can regurgitate the information correctly and demonstrate it correctly and explain the reasoning behind it, I think is important, because not many people can explain it and not many of the coaches out there can demonstrate it. So
I think that would be because whenever I couldn't figure out what you were saying,
I just said do this, and you're like,
and I'd be like, yeah, and then I would try it. I'm like, wait, do that again. Yeah. Sometimes many times over,
and
I
you
would
could
ask
mimic
you.
what I was showing you if you didn't understand it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a difficult thing. You can't really vet coaches. There's not a ratemycoach.com like there is Rate My Professor. So there probably should be something like that.
I don't know.
Maybe not. But yeah, I mean, there's no way to really do that other, there's no way.
So that's difficult then.
Yeah.
But I guess if it's somebody who has worked with other people and like your personalities mesh and you can hear and learn from the other person, then that's probably pretty good.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, the way I approach it for coaching is when, you had something you were working on, I would give you stuff that I think would immediately make you better.
Yes.
Right? Not necessarily tear down everything to rebuild it all with a huge lag of your scores and development, but it's like I can enhance your development and enhance your form and make progress all at the same time, and it's not going to be so detrimental to your performances or your motivation or, cause an overload of time to be involved.
I think a really good example, and I didn't even know I was doing this, but you didn't point it out until after the tournament because I was shooting fairly consistently for what I could. When I draw, I'm like my wrist.
She starts with a broken wrist this way, and then would try to come in.
And I'd correct it at full draw because I would like lock in, but I always was very, very broken.
Yeah, so we're gonna fix that. That's one of the first things that we're gonna be fixing over the next few weeks for sure. But yeah, I think it's just finding a good solid coach is really going to help. And the important, because I mean, it's literally 6 weeks of development, and at an 18-meter, 20-yard tournament, she shoots a 448. Like and that's on a small 40-centimeter face. That's not on the big Joad face. So.
Too bad.
I mean, no kidding. So she's like, yeah, whatever. But I think it's a pretty good score personally.
I felt very proud of the score for being, where I was and and being able to have access to you. I know that's an unfair advantage kind of, but
that, and then also like, I had my own struggles during the tournament. I was having difficulty managing my grip sear. And noticing again, because of that heightened sense of awareness due to the pressure, I could feel my bow jumping in weird directions that I hadn't normally in practice. And it comes down to because my hand pressure wasn't consistent in the grip before I set my grip sear. So now I do that after I draw back. Sear? So that's where I take my fingernail and I drop it off the edge of the grip. And
pretend like it's a clicker?
Yeah, to pretend like it's a clicker to eliminate my target panic, to have a psycho trigger that would tell me when to shoot. So it's totally legal for FIDA use or World Archery use as long as it's not an item, because they can ban an item or a device, but they can't ban an action. So it's legal to do as far as that is concerned. But I was having troubles with it because the consistency of how much pressure I would put on it, the speed of squeezing it and things like that, just it wouldn't drop consistently, and it was because the pressures in my hand were wrong and inconsistent. And so I'm juggling back and forth between the grip sear focus and then the bow jumping different, so I was focusing on my hand pressure, and it started great and then started to not be so great, and not really frustrating, but I was trying to deal with it and manage it, and ended up figuring it out that I set my hand now like I set my recurve, draw the bow back, and then set my sear instead of setting it down at brace height. So it's allowed me to be more consistent there, and now I'll have a shot cycle, which has to do with what she was struggling with in the beginning of changing everything. I can't see, I can't do this, and the music's different, and all sorts of things.
Crazy.
It was not an ideal situation. It was as difficult as a start tournament for her, but also for me to come back at it was a little challenging, and so I figured out the grip sear, and then now I know I've got to work on my shot cycle with my barebow so I can have something to focus in on when there is a tournament and pressure for a tournament, because it's different.
So I'm just thinking the other thing that I didn't mention that was so valuable, and I feel a little silly saying this out loud, but I had told you, like as previously, a dancer, like ballroom dancer, like you visualize your routines.
Sure.
And you don't just visualize the end, and you don't visualize pieces, you visualize every component from start to finish and how it feels in your body, and complete awareness. And so I was out of town for a week and couldn't shoot, and like there was, I think 3 of the weeks I only got to shoot once out of the 6 weeks. But I was making sure I spent like several times every single day, going through the entire sequence the best I knew it.
Sure.
And how it felt. And for me, I felt like that was really beneficial because, you know, people say, oh, well, if you want something, you will make time to go practice. But like mom, business owner, wife, second business owner, webmaster, like it's, there's not always time. No. There's just not.
But that only goes so far if you continue to focus on that through the competition. And in the beginning, you weren't focusing on that.
But once I did.
Yeah, once you did, it was like super easy and automated, kind of.
Well, not automated.
As automated as it can be for a 6-week-old starter.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was better.
Yeah. So it's definitely important to really have a good shot cycle. That affected both of us.
Yes.
And a coach.
The coach was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So, shameless plug. If you don't have a coach available, I've done the video coaching review with you.
Yeah.
And I know, but I mean, honestly, I still go back and watch it sometimes because, like, which makes me feel silly watching myself there, but it's so valuable because you would point things out and then I'm able to go back and watch it as many times as I need until it's like, oh wait, that's no longer even an issue, and I can just fast forward and figure it out. So
that's why I have many different options on my website, jakekaminski.com, for coaching. You can do live Skype based or Google Hangout based type coaching sessions, but I actually prefer, and I think it gets more information across to the shooter, to do the video coaching review. Essentially, you just submit a video of you shooting from a couple of different angles. We put links in the description for her video coaching review, so you can check that out and you can get the explanation and breakdown of how it works. But you can get way more out of it for the time spent on both sides, because when I'm coaching somebody, I can only give you 2 changes, maybe 3 changes at a time.
That was too much for me as a beginner.
Yeah.
3 changes was a lot.
Because by the time you get to the 3rd change, you start losing the first change, and it's this back and forth and continual like battle, and it's impossible to manage. So being able to give me questions and your goals, and then allow me to just work with your form and tell you things to work on, you can then work on those on your own. And I think you get a longer lasting effect, and I can give you more critiques and more feedback in rapid succession that won't confuse you so much, because you can work back and forth and try to find stuff that works best for you.
Yeah.
So all that stuff's available on my website, jakekaminski.com. I do in-person coaching locally as well, and I will also travel to do larger groups or individual stuff too. You know, there's some places that I've gone to mostly locally, but this is the range that I coach out of here. This is Gator Bowman, that's not too far from where we live, and it's beautiful. We're the only ones here. We have the range to ourselves, and we get to play archery.
As I say.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're going to actually today, now that we're done with indoor season, because we've decided not to shoot NFAA indoor states.
It's just the timing is bad.
Yeah, timing's bad, but we're going to shoot some outdoor stuff between field archery, NFAA and NAA, as well as 50-meter rounds and stuff. So
is that the same as the FIDA field? What is that?
FIDA field is the FIDA field round.
Archery.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. So that's my favorite game. I can't wait to play with that one. And today we're going to see our point-ons and see how far she can get back, and see what we need to do to get her back to 50. And we're going to see what we can do to get mine down to 50. So yeah. Anyway, well, thanks everybody for kind of following us through states and encouraging us. And
thank you.
Yeah, Heather's really enjoyed learning how to do all these things herself in the beginner series. So if anybody has any more suggestions or requests for beginner type content, just comment below and let us know what you're looking to do. You know, on our list we have serving a string and building a grip for sure, among a few other things too. But if you have any more things that you specifically want to know about, ask below.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually genuinely intimidated about the grip building, and that's why every time you're like, oh, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, we'll do that a little later. I don't know why.
So
it seems very intimidating.
It's not. You can just grind it off. It doesn't even matter. It's not like it's you know, changing your whole bow and you can ruin your bow. So.
Oh, I guess that's true.
Yeah, it's just a grip. But anyway, all right. Well, thanks everybody. Take it easy. For watching. If you like this video, consider hitting the subscription button and the notification bell, as well as the like button. I would appreciate it. Also, please consider supporting my channel if you head to my website, jakekaminski.com. There'll be info and links on Patreon, apparel, books, and equipment sales, PayPal donate button, a P.O. box to send things to, and above all else, please share this video because there's no better advertising than word of mouth.